All right, okay, so
Okay.
welcome to the
Well,
first episode of the Stronger Things podcast. I'm Kevin. This is
I'm
Grumpy.
Sophia.
Hey, this is
Sorry.
Grumpy Cat. Grumpy Cat comes before you.
Okay.
And you're Sophia.
Yeah, I'm Sophia.
All
Hi.
right, so tell me, Sophia, if people wanted to learn more about getting stronger or about coaching, why would they listen to you?
Why would they listen to me? I have some forms of credibility. I grew up doing the Brand X method, so I started when I was 5, and I am now 18. Almost 19. So I've been doing it about 13 years, and that's all been about like kind of incorporating play with fitness and kind of turning it into a desire for lifelong fitness and lifelong strength. Um, and I think listening to this podcast will help because it kind of mixes the best of both worlds, because you have all the experience coaching and I have all the experience doing it and growing up with it. And I'm going to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and I'm still going at exercising and fun in different ways here.
I heard that last year MIT was the number one university in the world.
Yeah, and according to, I think it's something, one of the world reports, it's for also 2019 top university.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm,
Okay,
yeah.
that's pretty cool. The one I saw said that Cambridge was top, but I'm British, so I'm biased. I had to look for like when has British universities beaten American ones?
There are different like lists, but I know like on most of them MIT is always up there, and on some of them it's number one, and it's been number one for a while.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I like that because one of the things that I have several triggers, lots of them, and one of them is anecdotal evidence. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't like it when people are like, well, you should squat this way because, in my experience, and that's why, I don't like that. You can't
Yeah.
get confused between personal experience and empirical data. And this is why I like, having you here because, you're, I don't know, the world's smartest teenager, right? And you're doing all this research stuff at MIT and all that. And so, like, that's good because you can provide us with some kind of statistical, researchy type stuff. So that's also pretty cool.
Yeah, it was actually pretty funny. Just like a few weeks ago, actually, before that one seminar, I don't know if I told you, but we had been learning about torque and forces and physics, and we literally did a problem where every single step of the way, we measured out and calculated the force that would be put on the spine if you lifted a mass certain ways. So like with straight legs or with bent legs or, in good form. So that was really interesting. It literally right there, like smack, boom, proved why you shouldn't lift one way compared to another way. So that was cool.
That's interesting. So tell me
Mm-hmm.
more about this. Because, the thing is I see is like a lot of people like they're doing deadlifting with a non-neutral cervical spine, right? They're like got their head cranked up like this. And, as far as I'm concerned, that's bad for force production because you can't transmit force through a deformed lever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, there are like so many different ways that can be calculated too.
Interesting.
And I'm still exploring different ways to calculate all that.
Well, we should talk about this. I'm interested in that. I think I showed you when we were in Belfast last week, like when I'd worked out the difference in force production with having your weight on your heels. Yeah, this guy, is talking about this anecdotal evidence. Is like another thing that's one of my triggers is people that have become confused between points of performance and coaching corrections. So, and this one is weight on the heels. At some point, someone will have been, squatting with the weight on their toes, and a coach will have then said to them, "Put your weight on your heels," to try to correct them to midfoot, but then haven't quantified that that's the reason. That person now thinks my weight has to be on my heels. Later on, they go and do, a weekend course that qualifies them allegedly to coach others, and then another trigger, and then they tell people that your weight should be in the heels in the squat. But actually, apart from potentially the dip phase of a jerk, I can't think of any reason why anyone would want to have their weight on the heels.
Yeah, like just completely on the heels.
Yeah, I mean, because you're adding like an unnecessary moment arm, right?
Mhm,
Why
yeah.
why would you do that? Gravity comes down in a straight line. Why would you want to then push back up an incline, right? It doesn't make any sense. But hey, what do I know? So
Yeah, I think also at some point I have to explain moment arms because I know that's a physics a physics topic that a lot of people aren't familiar with.
yeah, and that's the thing is, so like this is obviously like I guess our first episode is just to be like, what are we all about? Why would we want to do a podcast? Why would people be interested in listening to us, looking at Grumpy Cat, and you know, and it's for me, it's all about the fact that there's a huge amount of disinformation and bro science out there. And also, I think in general, because of the way marketing around functional fitness has gone and strength as well, is that people are interested in looking at athletes and not necessarily at coaches.
Mm-hmm.
This is a mistake because athletes are genetic outliers. And Joe Public can't copy what an outlier does and have the same result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to get people to think otherwise when they have that one mindset.
Well, it's very difficult, right? I mean, you're a lot younger than me, but you may still have heard of David Beckham. You know who David Beckham is?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, so he's like some expert at free kicks in soccer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you've heard of David Beckham, but nobody's ever heard of who David Beckham's free kick coach was, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just an example of that. It's like, you know, it's like you might have like a famous baseball pitcher or something, but what's the name of his coach? Because actually he's a genetic outlier. He doesn't know how to teach you how to make these type of pitches. David Beckham probably doesn't know how to teach you how to make those kind of free kicks. At some point, someone's taught him that. But nobody knows who those people are, and nobody seems to be interested. Everybody just wants to, you know, copy what athletes do. But, you know, if you're a 400-pound sedentary male, you probably shouldn't be prioritizing copying an athlete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like when you walk in the gym and you want to do that and they tell you like how to do that and that's what you then believe to be true. And then if a good coach comes in and tells you, oh no, that's not right, and then I feel like the people just get angry and like frustrated.
I mean, you've been spoiled though, right? Because you haven't really been exposed to bad coaches.
I've only heard of them, but yeah, I never experienced it. So yeah, that was very fortunate.
Yeah, it's the same. I used to have a really good coaches when I was doing martial arts when I was younger, and then when I went overseas, like I couldn't find anybody to coach me, and it was because I didn't realize that I'd had an amazing coach, and I thought that everybody in the world was just like that, you know, right?
It's a little bit of a distorted reality, but it's yeah.
But I mean, we met a couple of weeks ago, right? We met at the Brand X seminar in Belfast, but we'd met before that because I came to the gym. When was that? Like 2 years ago, right? Maybe.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was about 2 years.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah, it was 2016. I think like maybe May or June, and then I came down, and I'd previously been. I'd been up training at Mark Bell's gym, Super Training Gym. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
So Mark Bell's like a famous power lifter, and he was a wrestler, and he has a gym called Super Training Gym, and it's an amazing place because he's opened this gym, and he doesn't charge any money for people to go. It's free, and you can go in there, right, and you can train as long as you know you're between whatever hours, and you'll have like world champion power lifters and weightlifters coaching you, and that's pretty cool.
Wow.
I keep getting these weird pop-ups on my screen, like telling me I've got emails. Like so they're all like spam. Anyway, so Mark Bell, I went there, right, and I told Mark that I was going to go down to Brand X, and he said that he'd actually been to Brand X before, and you know couldn't find fault with any of the kids. And he's like, dude, you won't even find anything to fix because these children all move perfectly. Right? And we're talking about like a really famous powerlifting coach. And like for him to say that was like, I was like, okay, cool. Well, there's something special happening down there. And he was right. Like I found it incredibly difficult to pick any fault. Normally, when I go in to teach seminars or go into gyms, it's like I almost pass out from the number of faults I see. It's like my brain short circuits. I'm like, I can't even look at this anymore. What's happening? This can't possibly be real life.
Yeah, no, and I feel like that's very true in most gyms or any other gyms that I had like been to, whether it was like a friend's gym or just any gym. And it was always like Brand X was always so different because we all grew up knowing how to do the right form, not just knowing, but like being able to do the right form and knowing when we were or when we weren't moving with safe movement, like with safe form. And I think, and that was another thing, like at the gym, it wasn't just that we knew how to do it, it was also really important to us, because like the coaches emphasized it so much. So growing up, we knew like that was the way to do it and that was the right way to do it. And so it wasn't really a question that we had to focus on it. Like it was just something we did. And like for me, it was actually something that has made me like proud growing up. But like a lot of people are proud of their fast times, how many rounds they get, how fast they get stuff done. But for me, like a lot of it was growing up and like knowing that I grew up in that gym and I know safe movement and I know what's best for my body and I know how my body moves. I know how to control my body in the right ways when I move weight. That was a source for me to kind of feel proud of myself and help boost my own self-confidence too.
And that's one of the things I want to get from this podcast too is, like I say, is to share the information and hope that it helps people. Because to me, I mean, I've had lots of clients in the past who were maybe suffering from things like depression. They had maybe eating disorders. I've had people that were self-harming to cope with life. And they've come in and they've been training and they've been able to use that as a coping mechanism or strategy. And the thing is that a lot of gyms are focused purely on, like you said, how fast you can do these things, how heavy you can do the weight at, can you RX the workout. And then what happens is form is not prioritized. And then when that happens, people get injured. And if you have an underlying problem, let's say you're a self-harmer and you use that to cope, you then replace self-harming with working out. If you then get injured working out and you can no longer use it as a coping mechanism, you'll probably revert to the previous coping mechanism. Right? So this is one reason why I think it's really important we teach people how to do things correctly. Because at the end of the day, your members don't really care about how heavy and how fast. They'll only care about that if that's what you care about as the head coach or the owner. Because the owner is the one that sets the culture, right? Like when you were training, like you said, everybody was all about how well you can do things and understanding the mechanics. Nobody wanted to come in and go beast mode, right?
Yeah, and I think it's even like not just with like adults, but especially with kids too. Because if they're in that type of environment where it's only like go intense, go hard, doesn't matter what your form is, like that just establishes bad habits, and again, like that just leads to injury in the long run, and like that's not gonna last them their entire lives.
Yeah, that's it. I think this is all about that people really enjoy going to the gym. People enjoy the community. People enjoy working out, getting fitter, getting stronger, and we want to make that a sustainable lifetime thing that they can do, right? We don't want to have it for only short term and then, you become a sedentary person later because you can't walk because you've got sciatica or something like that. And I think it's really important, like you said, with kids, because nowadays, like I was living in Hong Kong for a long time, and the kids in Hong Kong would probably get blown over by a moderately strong wind. Right? Because they don't have any physical attributes because, their parents have prioritized, and I'm not saying that it's wrong because you're obviously very smart and are doing very well academically, but they prioritized academic achievement over and above any form of physical literacy. So you've got these kids that are just sitting down all day with their face in a book or on a computer And also, the only way that they're interacting with their friends is via an online chat forum as opposed to in person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think, like, you were saying that it's really important that we make this something lifelong, because if we establish good habits for children and teens, they will then carry those habits into their adulthood. I mean, adults all the time are blaming their childhood for being an asshole, right?
Yeah.
I'm such a, yeah, I know I killed that person, but, my mum didn't let me have peanut butter sandwiches when I wanted to when I was a kid, right? They like blaming their childhood for bad things.
Mm-hmm.
So if your childhood is formative of bad experiences as an adult, it's also going to be formative of good experiences when you're an adult.
Wow, that's really funny you say that, because literally, like 2 or 3 nights ago, my roommates and I were talking before we went to bed, and we somehow got on the topic of exercising or working out or something. And one of my roommates, literally, she said, "Yeah, exercise has always been a drag for me." And she said, "I guess it's because it was like never fun when I was little. Like, I guess playing wasn't considered like exercise for me." And then my other roommate seconded that. She's like, "Yeah, I can say the same thing." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's horrible. That shouldn't be like that at all.
Yeah, it's
and they're
like
both really smart. They're both talented, really smart, both MIT students, but exercise for them, like staying fit, isn't something that they want to prioritize, or that something they've never prioritized or seen a reason to prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit crazy because, I mean, what you've got is your mind, in this case, and their intellect is what they are investing in. But
Mm-hmm.
the intellect is contained within a vessel, which is your body, right? So, the better the state that this vessel is in, the better that it's going to be able to protect the contents. It's very important.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's something that you're very lucky to have been exposed to, because most people don't have that. And I think I went over to, so I did that when I met you last year, 2 years ago, sorry. And then I went back and I went to do some work, like consulting with a gym, right, in the Middle East. And they had a guy there that was teaching a kids and teens classes, and it was just a huge mess, right? There was just, everything was going on. And I said, no, look, we have to stop this. Look, you can do games, and that's all good, because we know that free play, right? And you're more of an expert on this than I am, because you gave the talk, right? Free play in children encourages the production of BDNF, right? So what is BDNF?
BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a chemical that's released mostly in the hippocampus and the frontal cortex, basically where all the learning and long-term memory takes place in the brain. And play is such a great vessel for producing BDNF because it basically helps the growth of new dendrites on all the brain neurons, which increases efficiency of communication of neurological signals going on in the brain, which helps kids learn, helps kids use their creativity, and overall it's something you want. It's a good thing.
So I'm led to believe that Brand X had kids do their homework in class after working out. Is that right?
Yeah, they actually there was when I was growing up, through the kids class, through the preteens class, through the teens class, there was a study area where they literally set it up so you can go and do your homework right after the workout. And that's what a lot of kids do. So we'd bring our homework and we just go and study after the workout, because that was a great time for us to be learning new materials or reviewing for a test or anything like that.
Because of the production of this BDNF that had just happened during the exercise time, right?
Yeah, and there were some times where after the challenge or after the game at the end of class, we would do brain teasers or riddles up on the board, and that was another fun thing, just to kind of get our brain working, get some creativity going right after class.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think that's one of the things that I was saying, we've got my experience in Asia particularly would be kids are being forced to learn a lot of material, but play doesn't have any part in this because that's viewed as a waste of time. But actually, the strange part is that, play will actually increase their ability to learn.
Yeah, that's such a great thing about play. It incorporates, it's not just the visual aspect of learning that it incorporates so many other senses and emotions, which are essential for learning something better, faster, and being able to remember it longer. And that leads you on a whole path of memory, and I've always been into memory and learning things efficiently. So that'll have to be for another another podcast.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, great. So we've got that. This is good for kids, and like I was saying, I was in the Middle East, and there was all sorts of crazy going down. And I said to this guy, I'm like, dude, like the play is good. We want that because of the reasons that you've just mentioned, but also we have to teach these kids how to have some kind of movement and motor pattern skills. Like you can't just say do 100 squats because we're going to see 100 bad movement patterns.
Yeah.
And then what we've got is, as we've got these myelin sheath, right, which is a protective sort of coating over a motor pattern or a motor pathway. And, I imagine doing 100 reps or something, you're just laying in this, embedding this signal. And we need to be able to create new ones, and we can do that with good movement, right? And he said to me, no, children are not interested in this. And I said, well, you're wrong. In my experience, I've just come back from America and blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, Arab children are different from American children. And that just blew my mind, that his thinking was that children weren't interested at all in learning how to move well. And, what was your experience? Because you were in a class with a whole bunch of other children. Did you have anybody that said, no, I don't want to learn how to move correctly?
No.
Oh, right. And why? Why do you think that is? Is it just they don't know any better, or?
No, I guess it was like a lot of the coaches, like the coach's attitude towards moving well and moving safely, and along the lines of like doing a squat correctly. They would like tell us the importance of it. It's not just something we're doing right then. It's something we're going to be using, for the rest of our lives. We need to be able to do it well in order to keep ourselves safe. And it's the same thing with like any other motor patterns, like jumping. Jumping was always a huge thing that they focused on, with like not just the foot position, but the knee position, and just how you need to brace and how you need to land, like jumping, landing, because that's something kids do all the time in play, is jumping. They're not just jumping like on the ground, they're jumping from objects, like from the ground to an object, from an object to the ground. And that's how a lot of people get hurt. And I was talking to one of my friends a month ago, and we were talking about, I guess, injury came up along the lines, and she was appalled that I hadn't like twisted an ankle or hadn't torn a ligament in my leg or something, because she said, yeah, it's like every 2 months I twist my ankle. It's a common thing. Because I guess she had never been taught to properly brace, and because of that she had never learned to or build the strength in her joints to support herself when it came to the time when she hurt herself. So by just practicing good motor patterns, it's building strength where your body needs it and where it's going to be able to protect yourself later on.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing too, is like I've been seeing a lot of videos recently, because one of my number one most favorite things to do is to troll people on Instagram.
So bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, I don't have to do it, but I want to.
It's absolutely terrifying.
And I've seen these kids, right, that are like 8 years old doing triple body weight 1 rep maxes. And that's the thing, is that we have to understand that children and teens are a special population, and that they don't get strong in the same way that adults do. Right?
Yeah, they don't build muscle like.
So we can't give them a hypertrophy program, right? We've got to give them basically motor patterns, and they're going to get stronger by repetition and reinforcing position, rather than they are by lifting giant loads. I think this is something that's important to try and get across to coaches as well, because a lot of people are running kids programs, and I don't blame them, because if you're running a gym, you're running a business, and you have to try to maximize your revenue. But just because you want to add a kids class doesn't mean that you should. you need to learn first what the requirements of that population are before you do something catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And again, that's hard because it seems like when somebody first comes to it, it seems like, oh yeah, it's easy, like a kids program. How hard can that be? But there's so much more that goes on. Yeah, you're right. Especially with the kids, like the population of kids and teens, they need an entirely different kind of special attention for training.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of gyms recently. They're adding special programs for high value markets. For example, golf, right? They're adding golf fitness, and they're doing that because golfers tend to have a lot of money, right? So the weird thing that blows my mind is so you're adding a special, unique program to satisfy the needs of a golfer, but your kids program is just a scaled down version of the adults program.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing is, you can't treat golfers as a special population, but not children. I'm going to open a gym and I'm just going to train people that can afford to own a yacht. It's going to be called Yacht Fit. That should make me loads of money.
Yeah, that would. Oh man.
All right, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's us introduced ourselves and what our ideas are for this, right?
And basic format, I guess.
Yeah, we're going to chat. Hopefully we'll have some guests on as well. I know that Keegan Martin, who's, I don't know, what's his job title? It's something very important sounding, International Development Director of the Brand X method, right? He's going to come on. I know that we're going to have him soon, and he's going to talk about what Brand X is. Exactly, representing. But the thing is that I want this to as well be something non-absolutist, because there's other podcasts that I like which talk about strength, but they've become so absolutist that they're only presenting their own ideas and their own opinions, and everything else is rubbish. And that's wrong, because, I just want to avoid this kind of cult-like mentality. So I'm hoping we'll have a diverse group of people on. I know that you and I have talked about some cool people to reach out to, some academics, some people that are running programs for underprivileged populations, and other coaches too. So I think it'll be super fun. All right, so that's episode 1 of Stronger Things podcast, and episode 2 coming your way next week.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sophia.
All right. See you.
All right, bye.